Shane Toven is on a cruise ship in the Pacific Ocean, and he's our guest today. We're talking about remote control, how satellite communication actually works with TCP/IP on each end, and a lot more, including food on the cruise ship for engineers. That's coming up. Cruisin for Engineering with Shane Toven, next on TWiRT.
This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store, with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics, with the Bionics Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts.
Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from this microphone, or your microphone, to the light bulb at the top of the tower there. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host in Nashville, Tennessee, at the Telos Alliance Studios here in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a wintry day. I guess winter doesn't officially start for another 2.5 weeks or so, but it's sort of feeling like winter over a lot of the U.S. It's dreary outside. Not too cold here, but it's a little bit dreary outside. Why am I wearing this shirt? Look at my fun shirt here. This is a beautiful tropical shirt. This is actually very light. This is great to wear in the summertime to, whether you're outdoors roasting a pig in the ground and eating pineapples and mangoes and whatever you have in tropical places. I can only dream about that. But we have somebody for our guest today who is not dreaming it, but he's living the tropical life of a cruise ship. And that's Shane Toven. Shane, it's good to see you. Welcome in. How you doing?
Hey, Kirk, thanks for having me back on the show. I always enjoy coming on This Week in Radio Tech and just sharing and talking about what's going on.
All right, if you don't mind, I got to talk about your appearance here for a second. Look at that shirt. What is going on with that?
I'm in full-on tourist and vacation mode right now. I couldn't resist. I had to wear the lime and the drink shirt here. So,
all right, now I got to ask: Are you wearing flip-flops or sandals?
I am not, but I am wearing black socks with khakis. Something one of my friends on Facebook pointed out to me after seeing one of my pictures. If that's not the most engineer fashion thing ever, I don't know what is.
I thought it was at least going to be white socks and sandals, or socks and flip-flops. Are you wearing a fanny pack?
I am not, thankfully.
Okay. Well, see, you're not all tourists, just the shirt. That's great.
Yeah, just the shirt, But I am carrying my cell phone everywhere and snapping a lot of pictures. So, yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I have seen a few posted to Facebook. So Shane and I, and you, dear listener, dear viewer, we're going to talk about a few, landlocked engineering things. We're going to talk about some of the things that Shane sees at various ports of call. Broadcasting in other countries, to me, is very interesting. And Shane's been through Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and a few other ports of call in Mexico. And we're also going to talk about satellite communications and remote control and talk to Shane about the satellite communications that he is working with right now. It ain't perfect, but it's really good, especially on a ship with, thousands of people on it and people using the bandwidth. And it's come a long way, baby. So we're going to talk about that on This Week in Radio Tech. Hey, our show, I forgot to get my prop out here, but it's always handy on my desk. I want to thank Ray Top over at Radio Guide for, first of all, producing such a great magazine that has in-depth articles in here. Ray can take numerous pages to let an author give you a complete picture of some engineering topic. And that's what's valuable about Radio Guide magazine. I also like the fact that there's a nice big TWiRT ad right here in Radio Guide. Thanks, Ray. Appreciate it. Radio Guide, you can find it online at radio-guide.com. radio-guide.com. You can sign up for it to be delivered paper-wise to your home or office. Comes out every 2 months. And, the articles are kind of big. It might take you 2 months to get through it. Thanks, Ray, for publishing Radio Guide. All right, Shane, I don't know where we should start. I mean, every engineer deserves a vacation. And so many of us, it seems like we don't take vacations. In fact, this year was I work for Telos Alliance full-time. This has been one of the first years where I actually have taken some vacation time and actually enjoyed myself and actually didn't go do broadcasting while I was on vacation. Talk to me about what
Oh,
vacation
yeah.
is like for you and what you've been doing.
I mean, my new role is a little bit different in that, I don't day to day have transmitters at my, beckoning me 24/7. So that, that does help. But if that aside, you have to, as an engineer, find your downtime. You have to, otherwise, you're going to get downtime whether you want it or not, and it's not going to be in a pleasant way. So it's really, really, really important to make that a priority and take care of yourself. That's something I've really started to realize lately. If you don't take care of yourself, no one else is going to. So, it sounds, I know we're all really dedicated to our jobs, and that's great. It's awesome. But at the same time, I mean, radio is not worth dying for. You don't want to have a heart attack just because of your, because you're worrying about the fact that the transmitter's been off the air for 5 milliseconds.
I think a lot of us engineers, I'm not nearly as much as I used to be because I finally have started to realize that, my sanity is important. But so many of us have been adrenaline junkies over the years. And I know that when I was running Harnack Engineering, or taking care of my radio stations when I lived in Mississippi and taking care of stations in Mississippi and Arkansas and American Samoa, I was an adrenaline junkie. If there was a lightning storm, I kind of got excited. I didn't want a station to go off the air, but if one did, by golly, they needed me right then, right there. And I got in the car, drove through the pouring rain, lightning striking everywhere, tornado on the way, and there I am, headed to the transmitter site to see what's wrong. And I'm not sure that that's entirely healthy. Job dedication is good, but taking time off is also a good thing. You have some backup in your job, don't you?
I do, thankfully, and that's really important, is to build those resources and find people who, let's face it, none of us are indispensable or irreplaceable. It's important to build that support system, whether it be, contract engineers, whether it be, a colleague that you can train up and help to kind of, bear some of the load, especially when you're not out. And it also helps if if you do take some time off, but are still kind of there on the periphery, if they're totally a little, kind of a little uncomfortable with that. Boundaries clear, whatever it is. I still have my cell phone. People can still reach me, but they respect the fact that I'm on vacation and try not to get a hold of me. It's my choice whether or not I respond to something work-wise or not. And usually, if I do, somebody gives me a hard time about it, saying, "Aren't you supposed to be on vacation?" So,
hey, we're going to take our first commercial break in a few minutes, but before we do, I want to get a little bit more lay of the land about where you are right now. Obviously, I'm in my usual office here in Nashville. Tell me about what direction are we looking? I see ocean waves behind you. Tell us about where you are.
Right. So right now, we're heading north back toward Los Angeles. The itinerary was from Los Angeles down to Cabo San Lucas, down to Mazatlan, then down to Puerto Vallarta, and then back to Los Angeles. So right now we are somewhere between Cabo and Los Angeles right now, just kind of off of that Mexican peninsula there, and I'm making a pretty good clip too, about 22 knots or so. And what you see off to my background there, it's actually off to the west. So I'm on the port side of the ship. We're heading north, so that would be the west. You can see the sun is kind of starting to go down in that. It's about 3 o'clock, so the sun's about the right angle there. But so that's what you're looking at behind me. It's just a whole lot of water.
Hey, this is interesting. You said it's 3 o'clock. Here in Nashville, it's 4:09 here. You're in the Mountain Time Zone. I figured you'd be in the Pacific. You're in the Pacific Ocean, but you're not in the Pacific Time Zone.
So it's interesting. On this itinerary, the time zone actually changes twice. The ship's time changes once, because the time changes are so close in proximity between the two ports. So when we go from Mazatlan down to Puerto Vallarta, the time actually advances into what would be the Central Time Zone. But they keep the ship on Mountain Time Zone, and then they just shift it back as we. So like tomorrow night, we're going to shift back into the Pacific Time Zone. So before we pull back into port in Los Angeles. So.
We should remind our listeners just what you do for a living. You are working with the folks at the Educational Media Foundation. A lot of folks don't know who that is. Very large owner, operator of a lot of broadcast signals. K-Love and Air One would be the the brands out there for people to know. What do you do it for EMF, K-Love, and Air One?
So my official title is Senior Cast Engineer. And what that means is that I'm the guy who, for the broadcast side of things, the transmitters and all of that fun stuff, distribution, figures out how to break stuff and how to and how to fix it again. Actually, I figure I'm in charge of R&D, for the network and trying to figure out cool new ways to do stuff. But I tell people that my job is to find creative ways to break things and have a lot of fun doing it.
So as senior broadcast engineer, do you deal more with studios or transmitters, transmission networks, or all the above?
So it's interesting that our organization is set up. Our department, the engineering department, deals primarily with the transmission side of things. A little bit with the distribution side of things as well. I work with the guys who in the satellite group who handle a lot of the distribution, and I help set up things like codec links between sites and stuff like that. I work with IT, but the studio guys are a completely separate group. I do get to occasionally hang out with them and help them out a little bit, but my primary responsibility is out at the towers and the transmitter sites and making sure they get audio and making sure they stay on the air.
That's a pretty fascinating subject. How many transmitter sites does EMF operate?
Oh my goodness! The last count I had total signals, if you include full call lettered stations, translators, and HD subcarriers, including ones that are kind of leased from others. I think the count was up at 1,064 or something like that.
Okay. So just over 1,000 signals going on the air, and so you have HD channels, but some of which are leased from other broadcasters, right?
Right. Yeah, we have some that are leased from like. Various other companies like iHeart. You'll find some of our stuff on iHeart HDs, for instance, and feeding translators and things like that. So
now,
and likewise, there are other.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we do have a bit of a delay, although it's less than I kind of figured on. You do lease whole FM stations. I mean, some people know I'm part owner of some FM stations in American Samoa. And I believe EMF leases a whole FM station from us down there.
Yeah, in fact, I had the privilege of going down there and building that out. It was a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to get down there again sometime soon. So,
they've been pretty locked down for COVID. They've opened that up just recently. But our station manager flew back to the U.S. and then flew back down there and had to stay in a quarantine hotel for 2 weeks. He did some Facebook posts. Here, let me give you a tour of the quarantine hotel.
I think by the end of that, he was getting pretty punchy. I was kind of concerned for him.
Yeah. I hear you. So we'll also talk about the satellite communications. In fact, I guess we could let's take just a minute to do that right now. Talk about satellite. Obviously, you're coming to us from a cruise ship. There's no fiber optic or cable running to the cruise ship. It's all through the air, through the ether. And tell us about the satellite system and the public Wi-Fi that's available there.
So it's kind of interesting. They've got Wi-Fi and very extensive network infrastructure throughout the ship. I can only glance bits and pieces of it here and there. I look into a tech booth in one of the venues and I see stacks of network switches and I go, But no, the IP connectivity is actually coming from medium Earth orbit satellites operated by SES. Oh, actually, here we go. So you see if I can show you this. This is my little medallion here. It's my key to everything. We'll talk about that. This is actually a little transmitter as well, believe it or not. So if I can go off a tangent for just a little bit here.
Sure.
This is one of the really cool pieces of technology. And in fact, there are other applications. I mean, broadcasters could probably find applications for this, things like, equipment inventories and stuff like that. This is a little, it's got both NFC in it, which is a passive kind of technology that smartphones can read, other things can read, but it's also got BTLE, Bluetooth Low Energy, which is the same thing that like your little fitness trackers and stuff use to communicate with your smartphone. But they've got a network of these Bluetooth beacons scattered around the ship everywhere. I mean, they're like every few feet. So they can basically know where you're at on the ship at any given time through this tiny little token. It's also your payment on board. It's your room key. This is your life while you're on board. So, and it's also helpful in kind of a life safety situation because they know who's on board and who's not and where they are. So if there's an emergency, I mean, think about it. Crew's got to know where you are. So
the advice would be, if you want to defect from the ship, leave the tag on the ship, right?
They don't let you do that either. You have to scan it to get off. You have to scan it to get back on.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
Every single port.
You could leave it in a suspicious business at the port of call.
Yeah, and if you're not back on board the ship by the time it leaves port, I mean, they'll wait for a little bit, but you may have to do the run of shame up the dock.
If I wanted to disappear, I would go to a port of call, check out of the ship properly. I would go find some mean old mangy dog in a really bad neighborhood in the port of call, and wrap that tag with peanut butter and let the dog eat it.
Yeah, well, needless to say, without this, you're not getting much of anywhere on the ship.
On the ship.
Or if you want to,
and I'm sorry,
they'll send out the.
Which technologies are in use? I think you said there were 2 in that tag.
It's
or 1.
Bluetooth. Yeah, Bluetooth, low energy, and NFC, near field.
Okay.
So what I really wanted to talk about, though, back to what we were getting to earlier, is this little logo on the back. Some of you might recognize that. Yes. Yeah, they're a satellite provider. And actually, they are the provider of the IP connectivity to the ship through a system called O3b, Other 3 Billion. So this was a system designed to get internet access to all other parts of the world, basically, that didn't have it. And it uses medium Earth orbit satellite. It is shockingly good for what it. In fact, I believe they actually just deployed that on American Samoa, if I'm not mistaken.
It's actually been there for a couple of years. But yeah, tell you what, let's take a quick commercial break. And that O3b technology is really something else. A lot of cruise ships have it now. A lot of small countries and islands, especially in tropical areas where they are maybe too isolated to even make undersea cable economically viable. Or in American Samoa, where they actually turned down undersea cable for years because they had a really, a politically connected teleport that wasn't very fast. Well, years ago, Wired magazine wrote an article about internet in American Samoa. It was called America's Slowest and Most Expensive Internet, and we were customers at our radio stations. Hey, we're talking to Shane Toven. Shane is live on a cruise ship in the Pacific Ocean, sailing north, motoring north toward Los Angeles, back home. And we're going to continue with Shane in a few minutes. We are going to talk about remote control of broadcast facilities, transmitter sites that he may or may not have seen or been privy to on the trip. And we're going to come right back and talk about this O3b satellite and how it can really help people in lots of parts of the world. But that's what, of the other 3 billion. Our show This Week in Radio Tech, brought to you in part by my friends over at Broadcast Bionics. Pay attention to this ad. This is cool stuff. We'll be right back.
Camera One from Broadcast Bionics. Designed to bring video to your audio content. Visualizing radio and podcasts for social media. Camera One can automatically create, capture and brand professionally switched video for live streaming or upload, making your production shareable. Control and configure using a web browser on any device. Camera One is available as a 4-camera or 8-camera system using the Blackmagic A10 Mini range, including the A10 Mini Extreme. You can use cameras to suit your studio and your budget. You'll need 1 camera for a studio wide shot and usually 1 camera per microphone. A standard multi-channel sound card or IP driver monitors audio from each studio microphone, and we work natively with Axia systems. Ideally, this will be a post-fader feed from each mic, although you can use pre-fade audio or a mic split if that's all you have available. These audio levels are used to intelligently switch the video feed when each contributor is talking. You can also group microphones together into one shot and use the audio from a mixer's aux bus. You can use Camera One's auto switch feature, or disable it and switch using the on-screen buttons or the buttons on the A10. Recordings can automatically start when you tell the system you're on the air. This on-air indication can be linked to your studio's red lights via IP or an Avantec Adam GPIO interface. You can quickly browse all the videos that have been automatically created during your broadcast, download them, and post. Camera One is a user-installable system. You'll need a good spec Windows 10 PC, i7 with plenty of storage, and 16 gig of RAM. It's better if this machine isn't used for anything else. Remember, you can control the software in a web browser on another device on your network. Camera One, a thrifty way of creating scroll-stopping video from your show or podcast from Broadcast Bionics.
You know, Broadcast Bionics makes some really cool stuff. Stuff that is well-researched and proven and really helps you get and maintain audience thanks to all the social media interactions that are easily available. Camera One from Broadcast Bionics. Go to bionic.radio. Bionic.radio. Find out more. Thanks a lot, Broadcast Bionics, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, another cool thing, and that is Shane Toven out in the ocean on the West Coast, but in the Mountain Time Zone. Shane, what are you in your stateroom? Is that where you're at?
No, actually, I am in the. I'm actually in one of the little buffet areas here. This one's not in use right now. It's kind of for special type events and stuff that they have on board. But the other one is just up the way. So speaking of these little beacons, I'm going to show you one other really cool use of this. I mean, I am on a cruise after all. So remember how I said the crew can find you wherever you are?
Yeah.
Well, just a few moments. Okay, click. All right, we'll get back to that in a few minutes.
Oh no! What have you done? What have you done?
You'll see. You'll see.
Did you hit the flight attendant call button? What now? Can you group people like family? Can you find out where your family is?
You can, in fact. It's an opt-in feature, and it's really cool because I can, for instance, over on the other end of the I can see exactly where she is. Not only can I see where she is, the map will gate me to exactly where she is.
Ah. You know, I wonder if the folks at Disney and Universal should think about this kind of technology. Where's my kids?
I'm surprised they haven't rolled it out. Well, maybe they have doing these days. They got a similar thing with their Magic Pass, but I don't know.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, let's talk about this O3b. So what I've seen is a ship like the one you're on will typically have two satellite dishes, typically in the golf ball radomes, and both of these are tracking whatever sat bird is overhead. But then there comes a time when you said medium Earth orbit, so they're in sight for a few hours, not a few minutes like SpaceX, but a few hours. And what happens when it's time to transition? What happens then?
So eventually it does have transition. I honestly have not noticed a lot. I mean, the performance of the internet, it does go up and down, but it's generally been fairly good regardless. I haven't noticed any direct outages that have been like I'm out of view of the birds, for instance. There's no internet at all. So.
Mm-hmm. So what I've heard, and any place where there's and by the way, you are cutting up a bit now, so maybe other people are downloading their movies or Facebook. Too many people on the ship watching this show. That's probably the problem. So I'm going to talk for a minute. We'll see if you clear up. But what I've seen is there are typically two receive dishes. Well, actually, of course, they're two-way dishes. They're receive and transmit. But they'll both track a satellite until it gets near the end of its visible arc over your location. One of the dishes will break away and go back and go to the expected location of the next satellite, and it will find and lock onto that satellite. Once it's well established and getting a good signal, then the system controller will switch over to the dish that's gone and found the new satellite coming over. And then once the first one is gone, then the second dish will come over and lock on the same way. So there's typically two receive transmit dishes locked in, and then they'll take. So there's a good handoff. There's not a period of time when there's no data. So that seems to be how it's been working. And we have this in American Samoa, and there was a big jump in performance because we were on just a rather poor teleport. Just not poor, it was just overloaded. An overloaded teleport. And then we got onto some old fiber. They found a fiber that used to go to New Zealand, from Hawaii to New Zealand, and they said, we're not using this one anymore. You can have it. And so, well, you can buy it. And but it was like a gigabit, but it was only a gigabit for the whole island. And then they split it and shared it with the Western Western Samoa, the independent nation of Samoa. So that really wasn't a big help. What was a big help was the O3b. Yeah, Shane,
Right.
you're back now. What else can you tell us about?
I can see you. I can see you now, and so that obviously that means I should be back too. Oh, speaking of which, here we go. Oh, not a problem at all. Thank you, sir.
Oh my! What? What have you done?
Cheers.
Well, here's my
technology wonderful.
Here's my Diet Pepsi from Sam's Club today. I took my son to go get pizza and pepperoni pizza and Diet Pepsi at Sam's Club. Wow.
Well,
so,
that's fun.
Now, you and I are talking right now. We're basically unbuffered. I mean, there's just a few tens of milliseconds of buffering. So if you cut out, if the bandwidth changes a bit, okay, it's going to happen. But I guess you can watch Netflix, no problem there. You got plenty of bandwidth to do things like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've generally not had any problems streaming, although they do have a pretty good selection on the stateroom televisions as well. So I imagine they have media servers on board and some satellite TV and all that fun stuff too.
So with this connectivity, what are the implications for broadcast? First of all, in terms of what you do, remote control, checking on sites, have you had any problems at all with connecting to anywhere that you would if you were working right now?
I haven't. In fact, I could still get into any of the sites that I need to. I just remote into a virtual machine at the office, and I can get to any of my sites. And that's probably the most effective, rather than trying to do VPN over a satellite connection. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We before the show, you and I were talking a bit about encapsulation and how going through a satellite is a little bit different in terms of the transport than going over fiber or a piece of cable or wire, or maybe even different than Wi-Fi. What do you know about how things get maybe encapsulated to go over satellite?
Right. So normally satellite is natively kind of unidirectional. It can be bidirectional, but then that basically just becomes two unidirectional links. And TCP/IP always requires a back and forth. It's a constant back and forth conversation, right? So you can imagine with all that latency going up and down, that's not always going to be the best approach. So UDP, in other words, you just blap your packets out there and hope that it gets there. But you can add enough error correction, redundancy, and so on that it's not really a problem. If a few packets get dropped here and there. So, so you can do bidirectional connectivity via satellite. One of the systems that I use for my facilities, we have a system called Vsat, which is not. I mean, it's geostationary. It's not low Earth orbit or medium Earth orbit. It is a little slower. Bandwidth is limited, but it allows me to literally drop an IP connection anywhere, even if there's no cell service, even if there's no landline service, nothing. So that's been a really helpful tool for some of the really far-flung sites. And that was before anything else was really available, like LTE or even thinking about some of these other new satellite solutions.
The thinking about your employer, EMF, and the Vsat technology that you guys use. Now, you guys are big enough to where, are you on the HughesNet service, or do you kind of have your own wholesale that you've arranged for?
No, we have space on a transponder on a couple of satellites, and that's basically what we use. I mean, they don't really care when you lease space on a transponder. They don't really care what you use it for. So as long as you've got the right equipment on either end, you could use that space. Use it for a bidirectional conversation between your site and your headquarters. You could use it for getting audio out to the site, either encapsulated as IP or as just over DVB, which is kind of the native mode for a lot of these satellite transmissions. So.
DVB, tell me what that means. I've sure heard that a lot with regard to satellite. What does that imply?
So DVB, it stands for digital, I want to say it was video broadcasting, but it might be versatile broadcasting. I forget what the acronym stands for, but there are a bunch of different flavors of it. It's more of a European kind of thing. You've got DVB-T, which is for kind of the terrestrial television. You've got DVB-S, which is for satellite, and now DVB-S2, which is a newer flavor of that, more efficient flavor of that for satellite. And those are the two that I've heard the most about. But I know that there are probably other flavors out there, but those are the two that I'm most familiar with. So DVB-S2 is the one that generally you'll see on satellite these days.
Now, I believe you mentioned that some of your sites, or many, or maybe all of them, you've got a couple of different satellite services there. Do you have both a C-band and a KU band, or what's the typical setup, and what are the different functions of these connections?
Right. So those of you who are familiar with KU band satellite know that it's also prone to rain fade, snow fade. Obviously, any satellite is going to be prone to sun outage from time to time. Uh, so even with heaters and even with covers on dishes, you can still get things like rain fade, snow fade. Heck, even at the uplink side, if you're getting fade on that side due to heavy weather. So what really helps is some diversity. C-band is a lot more robust than KU band when it comes to these things. I mean, you'll still get sun outages. You may still get fade from time to time. But as a general rule, it's going to be more reliable. So if you can actually do both C and KU band, you should have a pretty reliable satellite downlink there, where at any given time, one of the two is going to be up, if not both. So when one has an issue, the other one generally is not going to have an issue. So the receivers that we use actually have two receivers in them, and at some sites we've got both a KU and a C-band dish. And if there's an outage on one, I mean, it's instantaneous. The listener doesn't even notice that anything has changed. It just instantaneously flips over that other tuner and just keeps right along going. So
now, I've certainly seen at various transmitter sites or buildings, if you want two-way communications, that's probably going to be over KU band, not over C band. Is that what it is for? Is that how you have your site set up?
Yeah, most likely. The Vsat system is basically it's all over KU, and basically what you would see is at the site you'd see a tiny little version of what you would have at the uplink end. You'd have what's called a BUC, or a block up converter, right? So you have an LNB, which is a low noise block. Counterpart to that for transmit would be a block up converter, right? And usually at a site you're going to see something maybe like a little 5-watt unit. It doesn't need a whole lot of power for that return path. So yeah, you have a feed basically that splits, and usually one would be on one polarization, one would be on the other polarization, right? Horizontal and vertical. You'd attach your block up converter to one side for the transmit end, the LNB to the other side for the downlink end. Those two signals would go to a satellite modem, which would then take it and turn it around as Ethernet. And then at the head end, you're basically just doing the exact opposite, but on a much larger scale. So.
So it seems to me that at your transmitter sites, you've got a need for two types of service. You've got continuous audio being fed to the site, and I'm curious if that's packet-based or if it's some other data stream-based. And then you've got two-way data for checking on things, remote control. Talk to me about the difference in the technologies of these two different functions, or is it the same technology?
Well, I mean, they're very similar technologies, but the thing is, with the audio side of things, it's not encapsulated as IP. It is native DVB, so it's just basically multiplexed on a DVB multiplex and sent over the satellite, and the receiver picks out those PIDs or program IDs at the receiving end. In fact, if you're so inclined, you have access to a dish. There's all kinds of stuff up there still free to air, and you can get it with like a little $40 satellite receiver. In fact, I just did this recently. I picked up a little $40 satellite receiver on Amazon, hooked it up to a downlink, and sure enough, there we were. There were all the audio services, and I could just listen to them straight off the bird. So that's one method for sure, and I mean it may be simpler, maybe less expensive, and in some regards, just depends on what your equipment capabilities are, what your goals are. You can also encapsulate audio over IP, over satellite. It is going to be UDP, but then your equipment at the head end changes. Instead of like a DVB MUX, you have basically an IP encapsulator, which would create it would turn it over to DVB and create another DVB PID that gets received and then de-encapsulated on the other end, basically.
Okay, so I've got the DVB distribution of audio. That sounds like there are plenty of other corporations that are distributing audio and video information this way over satellite. Help me understand a bit more though about the IP. What's the equipment at each end for that? And I guess it's still going over a DVB-ish type of signal, right? Over the satellite.
It is. It's still modulated in DVB frames as it goes over. And that's, again, because that's a pretty well-known standard, and a lot of things can understand how DVB, how to encode and decode DVB signals, right? But instead of just multiplexing MPEG encoded audio onto a DVB PID, you would take what's called an IP encapsulator, and there are a bunch of different companies that make these. It's basically an Ethernet port on one, and then it's an ASI port on the other, and it takes that, feeds it into your DVB multiplexer. It's just another PID, and then on the other end, it gets demultiplexed, and the same bits that go in come out.
Okay, that's making sense now. Thanks for putting up with my lack of clarity on that. But so this on the satellite link itself, on the satellite link itself, the same technology is used. It's the encoding and decoding gear at each end that says, "Oh, I'm going to put some packets in here." But now on the link that's returning some data, some remote control data, whatever, so Ethernet data, is it frequency sharing or is it time sharing? You have a bunch of sites. How do they all not transmit at the same time?
So it is frequency. It's frequency diversity and it's time diversity. So it's kind of like almost a TDMA type of system. There are certain slots that the modems can transmit on, right? So it looks to see what slots are available frequency wise, and it goes, okay, am I clear? Can I talk? Okay, sends up its carrier and then brings it back down when it's done. So the disadvantage to that is there are only so many slots available, so you can't have a site just like constantly sending something back. So that's something that can be interesting to kind of manage. So it's definitely something to take in consideration if you do something like this.
Where is that managed? Let's say you've got let's say you're you're remoted into, I'm just going to a Nautel transmitter. You're looking at the AUI, the beautiful display. There's plenty of data coming from the transmitter site back to you. What happened? How do you manage and say, okay, stop all that now? Sure, you could just close the window, I suppose. But how do you control that?
That's pretty much it. I mean, if somebody leaves something up, it can cause some problems if there, if there are too many sites that try to do that at once.
Okay.
But normally, I mean, if you look at the traffic patterns, I mean, the return stuff is usually kind of bursty. I mean, this gets into using things like SNMP, which are very lightweight protocols to send things back. Information about something happened. And it tells the head end, something happened, rather than being a continuous stream of data back to you.
All right, we're talking to Shane Toven. Shane is in the enviable position of being on the Majestic Princess houseboat, big houseboat, cruise ship,
floating city
off the west coast of Mexico. How long before you get back to LA?
I'll be back to LA on Saturday, so we've got one more full day at sea here, so it'll be 2 days at sea today and tomorrow, and then we'll pull into the port of Los Angeles early on Saturday morning. So,
gotcha. Wow, Shane, I want to show you a little something. I don't know how well you can see on your little connection there, but do you see what I'm holding up here? Yeah.
Oh, I love those things. Those are cool.
And you know what it is? It's a disconnector from.
I know exactly what it is.
From Angry Audio. I just saw Mike Dosh today. He's the one. I mean, sure, other people may have thought of this. Mike did it. He had a company make him up. Oh man, look at that. So you have talent. I know, Shane, you would never do this, but plenty of people have just, with their headphones on, just got up and walked away. And you know what? Headphones are kind of cheap, but you know what, Shane, you're probably like me. You don't want to have to repair the jack on the headphone amp, right? You don't want to, and it may, and if somebody yanks on that hard enough, you may break the circuit board. You may just have to put a new headphone amp. That's several $100s for a broadcast, style in the furniture headphone amp. So this will save you. This will make you buy fewer headphone amps over time. This is the Angry Audio headphone disconnector. It comes in this flavor with a 3.5 millimeter jack and plug, both sides there. And you can buy it, of course, in the 1/4-inch tip ring sleeve jack and plug with the same disconnector. And this also means that if you need to, you can mix and match. So you can, let's say you have a 1/4-inch headphone jack in your headphone amp. Well, you can let your headphones actually have the 3.5 millimeter. You can put those together and look at that. They work just fine. And the same thing, they'll just break right apart. when somebody gets up and walks away. This will save your bacon and save your headphone amp too, and save your sanity. Check it out, the Headphone Disconnector from Angry Audio. Angry Audio also has the full range of these Bluetooth. I saw Bluetooth on the screen. These Studio Hub adapters. Well, and you know that your wiring in your studio goes so much faster with these. No soldering, just use these things, plug them in to get your professional audio gear plugged into things like X nodes and blades and other Studio Hub gear, right? Maybe you have a radio systems console or something like that you need to plug in. Now, I'm sorry, Suncast, if you want to pop that back up, I'll take the proper cue now. The Headphone Disconnector, no more broken headphones or headphone amps. And other things like the Bluetooth audio gadget, really popular. Oh my goodness, from Angry Audio. Remember, problems disappear when you get angry. AngryAudio.com. Check out their whole catalog and all the Studio Hub and all the adapters, all the dongles and cable adapters and stuff. They are well stocked right now. I was just there at the factory. They are well stocked. All right. Our show is also brought to you by my friends at Max Connect Wireless. And for more on that, let's hear from John Takak.
With all of the recent cybersecurity attacks against large corporations, we were looking for a product that would give us the ultimate security at our transmitter sites and as well as with our broadcast equipment. Max Connect fits the bill very well. Its greatest security feature is the fact that it gives you a single static IP address. Using this single static IP address allows us to close hundreds of open ports on our firewalls across the company and restrict access to only the Max Connect IPs. This has greatly reduced our exposure to the World Wide Web and made us much more secure moving forward. It's also given us the ability to expand as needed in a secure fashion.
Max Connect Wireless. This is what the modem looks like. This is a cradle point modem, but they also have modems from PepWave. And I got to tell you again, it's not the modem that makes the difference. It's the SIM cards. When you sign up with Max Connect Wireless, you're actually signing up with like a data phone company. And they're the ones, Max Connect Wireless is the ones that have negotiated the high priority data so that your packets go through even if there's 60,000 fans checking on their Facebook or doing FaceTimes or whatever they're doing in the stadium, you get your data. It goes on through. You are eclipsed only by first responders, and they typically don't use that much data. Check it out. Max Connect Wireless, their website, Max Connect. I know it's spelled funny. There's a link in our show notes, maxconnect.com. And by the way, if you got a favorite carrier, like if you happen to know that in your area, Verizon covers the best, well, they have plans for Verizon, also for AT&T and for T-Mobile and for Sprint, which I guess now are basically the same. So check them out. Thanks a lot to Josh Bone at Max Connect Wireless. So many broadcasters are depending on their service. Okay, we're talking to Shane Toven, who is in the enviable position of sipping on is that a Mai Tai? Is that just a colored water? Is it a Shirley Temple?
I'm not sure. I don't remember what they call this thing, but it's basically a really fruit. It's all fruit juice. There's no alcohol, but it's all fruit juice. It's really, really good.
Hey, Suncast was asking, what do you have to do to get the umbrella in the drink? Is that just you pay extra for the umbrella?
I think that's optional. You bring your own umbrella.
So you are cruising basically northbound toward Los Angeles. You're on the port side of the ship, so you're looking west at a beautiful sky. And
Yep.
If Suncast will take you full screen, we might see those waves out. Yeah, there's some waves just over your left shoulder on our right side of the screen.
That's not a green screen. That's really behind me.
Well, I know, yeah, and I can see the back of your shoulder there, in the back of your head, in the back of your headphone. What headphones are those?
These are actually Apple AirPods Max, and you don't see many of them. They're crazy expensive, but I managed to somehow get a great deal on some, and they actually work really well. But there are other options. I mean, I'm kind of a headphone snob. Andrea will tell you that I'm a headphone and earbud snob. I probably have more than I care to admit. Yeah, I mean, these are up there definitely with quality wise. So.
Well, Apple knows that you are an influencer extraordinaire, and that's how you got a very inexpensive copy.
Yep.
All right, so
Thanks,
we've
Apple.
been talking. I'm feeling like I understand better the satellite communications and how that works. So thanks for explaining that part of it. Now, Shane, if you're like me at all, and I suspect you are, because engineers do share a lot of traits. When you go to a foreign country, port of call or whatever, if you're like me, when you're driving through town, maybe going to the zip line thing or wherever it is you're going, your head's on a swivel. Oh, a tower. Oh, a tower. Oh, look at that. Is that an FM antenna? What a weird design. And you're looking around for what other broadcasters are doing. How's that for you? Anything on this trip or on previous trips?
Oh, absolutely. And I would say the most visible one probably is down in Mazatlan. There's a huge hill with just a ton of towers on it that overlooks that whole area there. In fact, I actually hiked up to another hill with a lighthouse and what used to be a radio beacon on top of it. And you could look across and see that massive tower farm over there and just how vast that whole area is. So,
you describe some of what you were seeing there, and I found some pictures. I'll put these in the links to them in the show notes. I found some pictures here of tower sites in Mazatlan. Some beautiful, even Shutterstock video clips are available. I wish we could show them right now. I'm not sure if Suncast wants to find something and toss it up, that'd be great. But did you get to go to any tower sites, or you just kind of a tower tourist?
Unfortunately, I didn't. I'm just kind of a tower tourist. I would, at some point I would love to get hooked up with a local broadcast engineer and see some of these sites. But what really amazed me is that big site in Mazatlan. All the towers, all I saw were these massive self-supporting towers. I didn't see a whole lot of guide towers. The only guide tower I saw, I saw a few little smaller guide towers. One of them was actually up at that lighthouse, the former radio beacon that I went to. And I looked at the anchor point for the guy wire and like, that looks a little strange because it wasn't fully hooked. I mean, it was just kind of, there was a loop there, but it was an open hook. It wasn't like you're used to seeing where it's completely closed and secured. I thought that was a little strange. But.
Do you listen to radio when you're on the ship like that, or when you go into town?
Occasionally, but believe it or not, they seem to frown on radios on the ship anymore for some reason. Years ago, I actually, on one of my earlier cruises, I actually took some amateur radio equipment with me. I got permission and all that fun stuff and was working amateur radio, listening to FM signals, all that fun stuff. The steward looked at me a little funny when he came into my room and saw that all set up. But,
yeah.
Yeah, these days I suppose they figure that who's listening to radio on a cruise ship, but I imagine they're also trying to minimize people just sitting out on the deck with something blaring, and distracting everybody.
Oh, yeah,
but I don't know.
But, I can imagine.
But I do enjoy.
I'm sorry. You go ahead.
I was going to say, I completely forgot the fact that I do, in fact, have a little PIRA modulation monitor in my backpack, and I should have pulled it out and started scanning it around. I didn't even occur to me.
Yeah, I can imagine having a little shortwave radio set up in your room, a wire dangling, or maybe a stick antenna hanging out your window. And the steward asks, "What's this?" He says, "Oh, it's radio for coordinating with comrades." Sorry about the social cultural appropriation there, but could be the makings of a movie.
Oh goodness!
Well, let's talk about.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I keep talking over you.
I was going to say, I think their biggest concern is interference with operations of the ship. Back when these little Baofeng radios were really popular, I suspect somebody had brought some on board and was just playing havoc with the ship radios, and then they put an end to that. So they just kind of went, no more.
That's a good point. Yeah, I forgot about those. Yeah. The Baofeng radios. Good because they're cheap. Bad because they're cheap.
Right? Exactly. Yeah.
Let's talk about media on the ship itself. First of all, let's start at the top. I'm sure you've seen it probably bristling with at least a few antennas. Tell me what you see on the ship RF wise.
It seems like there's less and less direct RF on the ship and more SATCOM type stuff. Seems like even in this industry, it seems like they're transitioning more and more to IP. There still, of course, are radios for things like marine operations and operations on the ship. You've got UHF radios for various groups, like in hotel, theater, and all of that, and operations among the crew. Yeah, I mean, there seems to be less and less RF on these vessels, actually. You won't find an HF rig anymore
Oh,
for long distance type communication. It's all pretty much either VHF, UHF, or satellite. So,
you got to wonder if they have any VHF or HF for backup. Tell you, in the show notes, we're going to put a link to a website that you provided. There's a lot of websites that track ships at sea, and a lot of these websites primarily want to sell you a time on that ship at sea, so they're a little hard to navigate. But you provided one from marinetraffic.com, and I'll put that in the show notes.
Right.
But specifically, I'll put in the link to your cruise, or at least to this ship, Majestic Princess. It has a station number, and it's got some interesting graphs about the amount of time, hours or days, apparently when the ship is in contact with other ships through AIS messages or other communications. And I'm not sure what this, I haven't had a chance to study this site yet. Do you know anything about what they're talking about here with these graphs that show time of connection?
So I haven't studied up a whole lot in this either, but much like planes, I mean, these ships do have transponders on them that will beacon their positions. And as best I can understand from what I'm seeing on those charts, it looks like what they do is they kind of form like almost kind of like what hands would do with packet radio. And the more ships that are around them, the better they can cover it, and the further their messages can get out. So.
This site has lots of things you can click on for seeing a past track of the ship, and I'm looking at a very detailed one right now. You can also look at the predicted future track. Looks like you guys are oh my gosh, you're so close to what is it? Todos Los Santos. You're just west of Todos Los Santos and El Pescadero. Actually, you've gone a little bit northwest of all that right now. But really fascinating how closely they track all this. And, I should know that. Most of us in broadcast are not at all into maritime technology, right? There are a few engineers, I know, but most of us landlubbers are not. But it's fascinating how much information's out there. And, of course, it's ripe for satellite. And as you mentioned, maybe mesh networks, because there are a lot of ships at sea. They're in radio contact with each other. And so maybe somebody loses communication one way or another. Things are still transmitted, positioning and speed and that kind of thing, and heading over a mesh network.
Yep, I could see that transponder being extremely valuable in an emergency in case all else fails. You've still got that little beacon there telling you, hey, I'm here, out here. Here's where I'm at.
Wow. Hey, so when you return back to work, 2022 is just about here. What are you seeing for, and I can't give away any trade secrets, I get that, but what are you thinking work is looking like for 2022 in terms of transmitter sites and distribution? Are you guys looking at any new methods of distribution, any more robust things, or saving money anywhere? What do you think's ahead in the next year for you guys?
Well, I know in terms of what I've been working on for transmitter site racks, I'm looking at incorporating more and more audio over IP connectivity between equipment. I want to minimize the number of discrete connections between equipment as possible. Everything now speaks SNMP and is starting to speak AOIP. So it'd be nice to get to that point where basically all I have coming out of the rack is a composite connection and an Ethernet connection.
Yeah,
that's really it.
Are you? And by the way, if I could ask you to lean toward I think actually the mic in your laptop may be the one that's active, because the more you lean back, the more room sound we get, and then the less Shane we get. I want to ask you about what you.
There we go.
I want to ask you about what you said about Ethernet and composite. And we know that, you can do just about anything on Ethernet. I mean, this TV show right now is being done completely over Ethernet. We know we can send composite over Ethernet through digital MPX or even a micro MPX type of signal. Do you see, and even though we will always transmit FM signals that at some point were a composite FM signal, but we can also generate that digitally. Do you see more connections in your world going to an FM exciter as a digital stream and generating that composite inside the exciter, or do you still see delivering composite to the exciter?
Oh, I do actually. I would love to see the day where I can basically go to a site, plug in an Ethernet jack to a transmitter, and that's pretty much it. I mean, there is no rack anymore. There's maybe a receiver there of some sort, or an appliance that performs a bunch of functions. But then from that transmitter, or from that into the transmitter, just an Ethernet connection. I mean, I could easily see that happening at some point in the future.
Well, I think that's probably going to get there somewhere. And of course, some transmitters now, some Nautel transmitters will take something like LiveWire coming in. But I'd also like to see, I think someday we'll see options for things like micro MPX being built into the exciter. So you just feed it, 500 kilobits per second of IP. That's micro MPX encoded packets, and voila, you're on the air. Well, we still have to think about the HD signals going in there. RDS is taken care of in micro MPX, but HD is kind of a separate animal unto itself. Although Nautel has got some, and I don't mean this to be a commercial for Nautel. I've just seen some demonstrations. Nautel has got some pretty cool technology for generating all that in data centers, your whole signal, including HDs, and sending that to the transmitter side, and even having redundancy there.
Right. Yeah. So there are several proposed solutions actually for not only E2X traffic, but also your MPX traffic over Ethernet and any other control that you could need, all on a single Ethernet connection. So that's a point where I would love to see us get to.
Yeah, interesting. Because I guess one of the benefits of IP, and I'll get off my soapbox after this, is that we're able to borrow from so many other industries and technologies because everybody's using IP, and therefore there are lots of ways to carry IP and move it around and control it and monitor it and check on it. That it's not like a one-off technology. It's everywhere. And so if we can make what we want to do in the form of IP, then we can take advantage of all the other tools that are available to us. You pointed out SNMP a few minutes ago. I mean, that certainly didn't come from the broadcast industry, but it's something that we certainly can and are putting to use. How much are you guys using SNMP in your job?
Extensively. Just about everything at the site talks SNMP, and there's a remote control at the site that kind of acts as an aggregator for all of that, and that sends back to the head end that kind of tells us, hey, what's going on out at the sites.
Gotcha. Good deal. Hey, Shane, as usual, I'm going to ask you for a tip of the week here in just a minute before we wrap up our show completely. So be thinking of it. I know it's hard to think. You're there sipping on a Mai Tai or whatever that is, and all that beautiful sunshine and warmth. That sounds nice. All that sunshine and warmth. But see if you can think of a tip of the week here, something that our listeners and me can carry with us and think about implementing ourselves in the coming days. Could be a website. You know the drill. You know the tip of the week thing. This week in Radio Tech, I'm Kirk Harnack in the Nashville studio, the Nashville Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. Our show is brought to you in part by our friends over at VoxPro. VoxPro's got some really cool innovations, and disc jockeys love it. And if you're an engineer like me, hey, if you've got a disc jockey that says, hey, where's my VoxPro? I need VoxPro. You can use VoxPro not just for phone calls, but for so many things. Let's hear about VoxPro. We'll be right back with Shane.
Hey, what's happening? St. John here, coming to you from Command Central, and wanted to tell you about the absolute best partner you can have in radio. I'm talking about, boom, Wheatstone's VoxPro. Lots of different audio software out there. Why VoxPro? It's the only software designed to do what we needed to do, which is record, edit, playback in real time. When I say lightning fast, I'm going to show you how fast you can edit stuff up in VoxPro right now. So literally 3 clicks on the controller, mark left, mark right. Everything that gets marked, you hit delete, it goes away. It's literally that fast. So we're going to take this part right here. Boom. From caller 9 to him saying, I'm ready.
5, ready for that secret sound.
Boom. All of that stuff, hit delete, it goes away. Here's your edit.
You are tackling secret sound, caller 9.
I'm ready, St. John.
So one of the best features of version 7, this is awesome. It's effects macros, and you can literally put a chain of effects together so that instead of having to normalize a phone bit and then use noise reduction on it and EQ it and all that, you can literally build a chain. One button, this one's called call right here. I just click that. All of those processes happen instantaneously. Final thing that I love about Vox Pro, and there's so much more to get into, but one of my favorite things, you can load it on a laptop. I've literally done my show from a hotel room in Armenia to the conference room at, this was fun, jury duty. Great thing, no one could tell the difference. Vox Pro makes it totally easy. Telling you, if you're looking for the best on-air partner, call my friends at Wheatstone, ask them about Vox Pro, and you will be glad you did.
And the people to call for Vox Pro, actually, Broadcasters General Store, BGS, the website, bgs.cc. Or you can do what I do. You pick up the phone. Remember the phone? Remember how we used to use the phone for everything? Pick up the phone and call them at 352-622-7700. Really nice, friendly, knowledgeable people at BGS, Broadcast General Store, and they actually have access to useful information like delivery time, and they can get something to you overnight if it's in stock. They can tell you exactly what your shipping options are. They have a lot of good information right at their fingertips at Broadcasters General Store, bgs.cc. Thanks a lot, Broadcasters General Store and Vox Pro, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right. Shane Toven is with us. And by the way, you could, St. John there said he did a show from a booth at jury duty. Oh, my goodness. He could probably have more fun doing the show from where Shane is on a cruise ship. Shane, I got to ask you, have you been eating well? You got good food choices there?
Actually, really good selection. Of course, the later it gets in the cruise, the more you can tell they're trying to creatively reuse the food that they've got and stretch it out because they don't want too much on board, they don't want too little on board. So they're getting creative up in the buffet at this point. But in general, really good food, and that's kind of the dangerous thing. I mean, I'm trying to stay healthy, and there's food all around me 24/7. So my room is literally just doors down from the buffet. So.
Oh my goodness! Well, that's you've been on a health program now for a while, trying to eat healthy, and you know what? I struggle with that too. I try to make the right choices. Sometimes, hey, at Thanksgiving, that chocolate cream pie was just right there, and it's not great for you, but it just tastes so good for a few minutes. But I try to look when I'm thinking about it. I look for the celery, I look for the peanut butter and the celery, and the Brussels sprouts, and a small amount of meat, things like that. But it's tough when there's so much good food laid out, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it sure can be. But one of the cool parts about what I've learned is that you don't have to deprive yourself. You basically just have to listen to what your body is telling you. I mean, if your body is telling you, "Hey, I want some steak right now," okay, go have some steak, but don't overdo it. That's the thing. It's all about moderation. So
talk to us about a tip of the week, something that you'd like to leave our listeners with that you've had days to think about it now on a sun-drenched ship.
I just happen to have one sitting right next to me that it occurred to me, this is a really cool device. You probably can't tell. I don't know how well you can see it or not, but this is a little device that is, it's got a couple of USB ports on it. It's got your charger on it, but it's also a battery bank. So it is a combination USB charger and battery bank. That is really handy. I never realized just how handy these were until I had one. So it's made by Anker. They make a whole bunch of really cool stuff. This particular one is a 5,000 milliamp hour. So it's they call this the PowerCore Fusion 5000, and it's really, really cool. And it'll charge your iPhone, charge your iPad, all that fun stuff.
That's
so
brilliant.
This has pretty much become one of my everyday carry kind of things.
In my backpack, I carry a couple of chargers and a couple of batteries, and it makes total sense to have them in one thing.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. I mean, there's not even a cord. You just flip out the prongs, plug it in, and it's both a power brick and a battery bank.
Yeah. Well, that makes all the sense in the world, which is probably why nobody came out with it until recently. Good idea. All right. I've got the Anker PowerCore Fusion 5000. That sounds like a big fancy name, but I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And I don't even have an affiliate link, so I won't make any money from it, and probably neither will Shane. Shane, I want to thank you, and I wish you a very pleasant rest of the trip. Thank you for taking time out to get set up and to spend an hour with us when you could be on the Lido deck playing shuffleboard or whatever you do on the Lido deck.
Kirk, and I just thought this would be kind of a cool little, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we did a TWiRT from a cruise ship?
That's great. I've been wanting to ask you I've never been on a cruise ship. Never, ever once. And so I was on a fishing boat one time out in the Caribbean and I got pretty sick. Do you feel like getting sick at all on a cruise ship like that?
So here's the interesting thing. These vessels are so large and they actually have stabilizers. So you do feel the motion, especially the further forward or back that you get. But if you're toward the center, you feel less and less motion. So if you tend to get a little, car sick or seasick, you definitely would want a cabin toward the center of the ship.
All right.
And toward the bottom. So there's your tip for cruising.
I'll remember that. And I think you said go to the Lido deck. That's where the action is. Stay away from the poop deck. That's where you don't want to be. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, give our regards to your lovely wife, Andrea, and thank you so much for your time here, and thank you for her giving up an hour of your time here too. I appreciate it.
Anytime, Kirk.
All right. Hope to talk to you again on your adventures. Take care, Shane.
You too.
All right. Hey, our show This Week in Radio Tech, the sponsors. Please see them, visit them, say hi to them. That'd be great. Thanks a lot to Suncast, our producer, for producing the show. And thanks to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ Network. We've got a great show for you next week. Quentin Howard from the UK is our guest, and it's going to be wild. It's going to be fun. Quentin is a studio guy extraordinaire, engineer extraordinaire. We're going to talk to Quentin for an hour next week. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech.